Hi guys, this is Fernando doing another video for The Modern Survivalist. Here I have several tools for starting fire, and before I get started into this as of why it is important, and you're probably watching these videos of mine thinking of the information I could share with you regarding economic collapses. Given that I went through one in my own country in 2001 when the economy in Argentina collapsed. So I know several of you value that first-hand experience, and probably some of you may be wondering why I'm talking about things that don't seem to have much connection with it. Why is this guy, which I'm listening to because of his economic collapse experience, is covering things that aren't related to it? Well, I have a little story that goes along with this these items you see here, and I wanted to share it with you. It happened in November 2009. A family, the Pomar family, left their hometown of Mármol in the province of Buenos Aires, same one where I live. They were heading to Pergamino, another little town close by, to visit the parent, the father of the woman of the couple, of Mrs. Pomar, right? They were gonna be spending the day with grandpa. They were taking their two kids. So it was the Pomar marriage and their 3- and 6-year-old daughters heading to a little town nearby. Thing is, all of a sudden the Pomars disappeared in the middle of nothing. No one heard from them. They just seemed to have disappeared in thin air, and it became one of the greatest manhunts in the history of this country to search for the Pomar family. What the heck had happened with this family that all of a sudden disappeared? Their car, the couple, a husband and wife, their two kids, 3 and 6 years old. They started looking for them. Weeks went by. No one had any clue what had happened to them. And they started coming up with these theories about them being involved in drug dealings and kid trafficking and being involved with the mafia, that they had escaped the country, that people had been seeing them in Chile, in other countries as well, and it became this huge mystery of ours, and the most greatest manhunt was made to find the Pomar family. A month later, someone found them just 60 kilometers from their town, just about to reach the other town they were heading to visit the parent of Mrs. Pomar. So the father of Mrs. Pomar had told the police that he had received a text message from his son-in-law telling him he would be there in an hour, right? And there was nothing else to think otherwise other than Mr. and Mrs. Pomar had done exactly what they said they would be doing, that they were gonna be visiting this relative of them, the father of Mrs. Pomar, exactly where he lives. So you would have thought that the most reasonable thing to do would have been to check the road between where the Pomars live and the father of Mrs. Pomar town, right? So it was just like 100 kilometers. It wasn't this huge distance. And the thing is that we were led to believe through television that the greatest manhunt in the history of this country had been made, when actually they didn't even bother to look to the side of the road. Apparently Mr. Pomar had fallen asleep when driving to visit his relative. He had gone off the road, and the car was found like 15 meters within a bit of bush on the side of the road, some overgrown grass on the side of the road. It was the only single place from this route they obviously took where a car could be hidden. It was the only place where bush was overgrown enough so as to hide a vehicle and a few people in it, right? He happened to have so much bad luck that he fell asleep in this curve, and he went straight through it, crashed against the side of the road, crashed against a couple of trees and was covered with all the bush that was overgrown there. Apparently there was also someone that witnessed the accident, called 911, told that he had seen a car crash into this exact location, into this exact place, but no one cared about it. No one investigated it. They pretended to make this huge manhunt, this huge search, but no one looked for them. There's already an investigation going on about corruption, about search parties that were charged to the government of the province of Buenos Aires. These searches that obviously never took place or were just made for looks for the TV, for the cameras. Just last week they did a non-governmental organization made a study. They got together 30 people. They spread 3 footballs in undisclosed locations along this road, and in 3 hours they found the 3 of them. So this is pure negligence by a state that didn't do what it's supposed to. They failed to search a family that was lost in the most obvious place on earth they could possibly be. Right? It was determined that they survived. At least the couple, the grown-ups, survived the car crash. Mrs. Pomar dragged her broken body to her husband's side, waited there for rescue that never arrived, and she died 3 days later of exposure. She died 3 days later of exposure, waiting on the side of the road for help that never came, in spite of being all over the news and supposedly having all the police looking for them. They just never looked for them as they were supposed to, in spite of such huge attention by the media. So again, why am I talking about this? Because fire, just like having a tool such as a knife with you, just like having a multi-tool with you, and having a flashlight with you, is terribly important. If Mrs. Pomar, Mr. Pomar, who survived the car crash, could have had the flashlight so as to signal the people that were supposedly looking for them, at least signal to the side of the road where someone would have stopped, maybe, since the police were doing such a horrible job and the government was doing such a horrible job in searching for them, maybe they could have even signaled the police or signaled to the drivers with a flashlight, or in this case through fire. If you're lost, if you're injured, starting a fire, burning rubber that makes lots of smoke. Maybe if you're injured, you take off a tennis shoe and you burn it. That makes enough smoke for people to find you if you're not able to communicate or stand up or make yourself noticed otherwise. That's just another example that I can't avoid thinking about because it's on the news right now, with this case of negligence and this entire family dying because no one helped them. Other than that, I mean, there's so many reasons why you need to have fire with you. And it's one of the things that I make sure I have with me. As you've seen in some of the videos, this is the one I'm carrying currently. I also have in my EDC bag other means of starting fire, but just having a knife, multi-tool, flashlight, and something to start a fire, it's, to me, that would be the essentials to have. Thing is that when other factors are taken into account, if you're gonna be heading into more the outdoors and other locations where fire becomes even more important, and especially if you live in cold locations where fire is just the mean to stay alive and not die of exposure, it's pretty important, fire, and having means of starting one right away. Currently you see lots of this. You see lots of the fire steels, and they do work. They're excellent at what they're supposed to do. yeah it does work. It does work okay. It's nice and all. I don't feel as comfortable for it in a real emergency, maybe when you're wounded, as your one and only source of fire. Okay, even though I'm gonna be showing a video that it's already made regarding how to use this with some of the things you find in nature. For emergencies, I consider this to be your best option, so as to have fire right away. Imagine that you're Mr. or Mrs. Pomar, you're just injured, maybe you only have one arm working, you're just able to drag yourself, you're not able-bodied so as to go looking for a ideal tinder to start a fire using just a spark. You need flame, you need a fire right now. In that case, this is your best bet. The lighter is very practical, but if it gets wet, with rain, with you landed on wetland, or even your own blood is soaking it, you never know what happens. Imagine the possible situations. If it's wet, it's not going to be working, right? So it's okay, but it's not perfect. It's not the best option. The lighters such as the Zippo, they run out of fuel pretty quickly. The IMCOs lasts a bit longer. I actually tested it and it lasts twice as much as the Zippo, so it's a pretty good alternative. Then you have these storm matches, which these are NATO issued supposedly. These are the storm matches that they work even when underwater and in spite of strong winds. So these are pretty good, but the problem is that they come in the case that isn't as good as you hope it would be, and the strike surface is just bad. It just does not work. I mean, you really have to put out an effort to make it work. So it's better to have a case like this one that seals with a rubber ring, right? And it also has a little mirror, which is okay. Not a must. This isn't a signaling mirror, which would have a hole and it's square. It's a bit bigger and it's much easier to signal, but it's just something else to have there. Some cotton, and you have a few matches. These are Strike Anywhere matches, the largest ones. And here you have the storm matches. And I make sure I have a striking surface in there as well. If you don't have the striker, it's not going to be of much use, especially when it's out here. It's going to be getting wet, and as I said before, this one in particular is very poor. This one is much better. So just want to say that, just wanted to share my opinion on why is it important to have fire, and how things end up working out because of negligence, because of a poor country that is doing things as it's supposed to anymore, because of lack of resources, financial resources, whatever, lack of enough personnel or training them as they should. What ended up happening, because of economic reasons, ends up affecting every single thing. Everything else gets affected by it, all across the spectrum of the government and the country. Lack of resources make a huge difference in infrastructure, in services, and in rescue teams as well. So you have to be able to cope for yourself in general during all sorts of emergencies, and financial or economic collapse changes the country in ways that it also applies in that case too. Okay, so just a small video regarding the importance of having fire, and which I consider to be the best alternative. Usually when I have my bag with me, I will have this, I will have the lighter in my pocket, and then I also have the fire seal, and in my keychain I will have the peanut lighter, which you've seen in previous videos, that has an O-ring that seals as well, so it's watertight and it's not losing its fuel as the ordinary Zippo would. So that's gonna be it for now, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video, and remember to subscribe to the channel. Also check the forum at www.themodernsurvivalist.com, where you will find much more information as well, and a community of like-minded people. Take care and see you on our next video.